Hey everyone, it's Cate Stillman with the Yoga Healer podcast, and I'm here with Sieler, who's a medical anthropologist who's written a book on Marma points, who's studied with a yoga Siddha master, and I really just wanted to have this conversation about a lot of what's happening. I find in humans on the planet today. I'm a big picture thinker, like humans on the planet today, and how we're mucking up our technology, our human technology. And in this human technology, it seems that the yogis really knew a lot, and not just the yogis, but that the, people who were studying consciousness in particular, that there was an exploration of the physiology from a practical perspective of like, what can it do? And I feel like we've really lost touch with that. And a lot of this, I find like the studies that I'm seeing in allopathic medicine, where the funding is, where all the money is really in the study of, it's in the study of chronic disease, but not in a way that's trying to look at the bigger picture of like how humans can be healthy, but more of how we can create more and more highly specialized, highly personalized drugs to counter the effects of chronic inflammation. And it's kind of driving me nuts. I mean, you can hear the irritation in my voice. I feel like scientism has overtaken medicine, and that most of us today aren't even really aware of it. And so when we're looking for science for research and validation, we have to understand what we're calling science right now is really the study of disease. And it's not the study of human optimization. And that a lot of your work in Marma therapy, in the vital points, and like where like this crazy intersection of where like healing practices meets enlightenment meets martial arts, that there's an entirely subtle technology of the physiology that we're losing touch with. I would say like almost a language going extinct. Because the practices in order to do that require some freaking discipline, and a teacher that knows how to do it themselves, right? And has been doing it forever. So that's my intro. Just go ahead and respond.
Yeah, thank you, Cate. Thanks, first of all, for having me on your podcast. This is a big honor. I've been following you around for quite some time, silently. This is, first of all, I share your frustration. So I really do. I see it in a very similar way. My background is anthropology. My future is probably somewhere else, but let me come back to that at a later point, maybe. What can I say?
Well, let's talk about anthropology. For those who really haven't studied any anthropology, maybe don't know about evolutionary biology or evolutionary psychology, how do all these things inform, like even just your personal interest to even get to the point where you could write a book on the vital points of the body?
So basically, personally for me, what drew me to different issues and aspects was the fact that I've been interested in different cultures, basically. So that is anthropology. So being aware there are different perspectives on life and approaches to problem solving, for instance. And so many issues we humans deal with are related to health, right? And disease. So these are the big topics for us in life. I mean, life is about being well or unwell. And most of the time we struggle with between these poles. And different cultures deal with these issues in different ways. And that is very intriguing. That has always been intriguing to me. And I've been also intrigued, especially by India. So this is the region where I went to, and then Indian medicine. Wow, as you know best, probably better than I do, this is such a vast ocean, such a vast treasure trove of ideas and philosophies and of directly applicable techniques to life, to health and disease. So this was very intriguing to me. So I kind of devoted myself and my time to studying Indian medicine. first of all, Ayurveda, of course, but then also the more kind of the lesser known Indian medical practices. And the more you dig, the more you find of these treasures. And especially we have these secretive or mystical traditions in India, and some of these are called Siddha. So there's it's usually thought of as a medical system, a system of medicine on its own, Siddha medicine. In fact, it's very similar to Ayurveda. If you were to try to ask this question, what exactly are the differences between Ayurveda and Siddha, then the more and more you ask these questions, the more and more it will be difficult to actually find an answer. Yeah. So similar in terms of you have the doshas too, you have Vata, Pitta, Kapha, you have similar techniques of doing things, of preparing plants and medicine and so on and so forth. You have especially this idea of secrecy, that has a lot to do with alchemy. So the Siddha medicine uses a lot of like alchemical procedures, and as you are yogini, you probably are aware of the fact that alchemy is not necessarily just about substances being transformed, but also like non-physical, like ethereal substances or essences being transformed. So yogis try to transform themselves all the time, right? I don't know if you agree to that, but this is about these kinds of transformations too, but also about substances. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself because anthropology is also what you asked about. So I was interested and intrigued by these very different approaches to life, to health, and to medicine. So, and that's why I went to India and studied there. And many of these medical gurus were very welcoming, at least one accepting me as a student, which was really mind-blowing to me and heartwarming in a sense. And so I kind of devoted myself to that study, but as a kind of outsider, as an academic outsider saying, oh, I'm just looking at this from an outsider's perspective. I'm not interested in like practicing these things, but this is like a theoretical approach and understanding. So I can tell others in, for example, Germany or other Western countries, this is how they do it in India, for example. And it's working, and it provides this wealth of knowledge and of doing things. And this is also where part of my frustration, which I share with you, comes in. Because so many of these nuances, of this alchemical knowledge, I would say, has been lost in the West. And I hope we have the chance to rediscover it. And Indian knowledge may be helping us. I think more and more of this knowledge, if we look back at the past decades, since at least the 60s, more and more of this knowledge has actually found its way from India, from Ayurveda, from yoga especially, to the West, to Europe, to North America, and to other parts of the world. And I think that's a very positive development, although a lot of things get translated into the Western context, and then we find new kind of alchemical explorations and results, which not always get to the heart, to the essence of how it could be. But so our bodies, they are full of these little secrets, and in fact, secret is actually the direct translation of Marma.
Is it? Oh yeah. I've seen that before, but it didn't really click. Yeah, and it's like these hidden in plain sight, right? It's like we all are in these bodies 24/7, 365, and there's these hidden. But okay, before we go into Marma, there's a experience in any of the subtle body medicines, whether it's from India or Tibet or China, these cultures that did a very deep dive exploration of subtle anatomy in their medical systems, their healing and medicine systems arose from personal experience and personal practice, not from dissection and cognitive analysis. And so because of practice, there's a need for a master, right? Or in order to have a system of medicine, there's a need for a master. And then the master is the practitioner, the most advanced practitioner, right? And therefore has the, I mean, it's really cool that, you know, that question about substances, in a way, it's like, if we take the word guru, it means heavy. Heavy with what? It's like heavy with light, right? Heavy with enlightenment, heavy with consciousness, heavy with the ability to manifest, to move, to wake things up, to pivot. I've read of, there's this cool book I'm into right now called, it's written by this guy, Lame Deer. It's called Lame Deer. It's his biography. And he's a Native American. He was a Native American who was in that, like the end of the tradition of like the deep wisdom, like the white man coming in and in the battles and all that. And he talked about the medicine man who could take someone who is either extremely injured or extremely sick, and they would bring them into a teepee, and anyone could come, like anyone who had any shred of disbelief of the power of subtle medicine was invited to come. They'd take the sick person, they'd wrap him like a mummy. They'd put him like right in front of the guru, the shaman. The shaman would start to more or less use mind and sound. All of a sudden shit would start flying, both inside the teepee and outside the teepee, like movement of objects. And you see this in the ancient texts. You see like people having these cities, these powers, that city, SIDDHI for the listener, these powers that normal humans, like right now, I was just doing research on mouth breathing. Like people are mouth breathing. Mouth breathing shrinks your brain size. This is like the opposite of that. This is like complete control over the breathing apparatus, complete control over the nervous system and the subtle nervous system that gets awakened. And what would happen is by the end of and they basically, if you were out of alignment during this shamanic ceremony, something would like hit, like a pile of clothes would like hit you. Like you're just out of alignment, right? So stuff would literally physically knock you over. It's such a cool story. At the end of the ceremony, the guy that was wrapped, or the woman that was wrapped, would be at the top of the teepee, the poles of the top of the teepee, physically moved, right? And all the mummification was gone, and they'd be healed.
Wow.
And this kind of stuff sounds so freaking outrageous, right? And the more, to me, it's like you can read about, I mean, whether it's like At the 11th Hour with Swami Rama or the teachings of Yogananda, it's like there's these stories of what the human is capable of, and we're so far from it, right? And so now it's going back to the role of the guru, the role of the master, the one who has the experience and is transmitting the experience to awaken the student, right? To transmute lower consciousness into higher consciousness. And it seems like right now, like when we go to the doctor, like often, I mean, in the 60s, the doctors were smoking. Now I would say, you know, doctors are really not much, maybe with their socioeconomic category, they're slightly healthier than the average person, but not much. And they've none of, you know, like it's not a practice-based medicine. It's a cognitive-based medicine. So in your experience with the guru and with Siddha medicine, like what did you notice about the transmission? What did you notice about the accumulation of practices over time, about lineage, any of that?
Yeah. These points, the Marma points, they are secrets. I mean, the root of that word, it actually comes from Sanskrit. I think that the Sanskrit root is mri, that means to kill, that which kills. So Marma is the point that kills, literally. And that's a fact, because any injury, any physical trauma can potentially cause death to a Marma. And the secret part, because I said it translates to Marma, because now in the common language, if Marma is used as a word, it means not killing or something, but it means secret, something that is secret. So it has this kind of double meaning. And to discover these points, to know what they mean, you need a guru. It's not possible without a master, without an skilled expert to show you these points, the precise locations, because as I will also,
because they're in books, like you can get the Secrets of the Marma on Amazon, but yeah, go ahead.
Books, and I carried some of those books to my guru and other experts in this art, and they all told me the same: forget these books, just forget them. You can write any amount of books, and it won't cover the essence. It won't cover this knowledge of the points, because there are many aspects, in fact. So Marma, as you might know, is a point of the body in which prana, which you could translate as life force, as vital breath, as some has called it, or as energy or vibration, as electric current, whatever. Like it's the stuff that we need to live. So otherwise, if no prana is there, it's a dead body. It's just physical matter, but it's dead. So, and I'm not even sure about physical matter, but that's a different kind of question. So without prana, there's no vital spot. A vital spot is a concentration of prana. So we could
even say just there that like the more chronic inflammation a person has, the less prana they have. So the more symptoms of chronic inflammation,
very good
the less prana.
Yeah, exactly. And
then I just want to also say that like it's exponential too. I mean, and that's really where those subtler substances come in, and the subtler channels of the body, is that there's an exponential relationship, hockey stick curve on the opposite side, not on the low side where chronic inflammation sufferers are, but like on the high side where devout practitioners are.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you mentioned the mouth breathers. In fact, in yoga, we know breathing in through the mouth is actually, it's not good at all, but often the theory behind it is lacking. In the Marma specialist knows that by breathing into the nostrils, you strengthen, you activate the Nadis. 3 main Nadis are there. There's any amount of Nadis. Some texts speak about 72,000 Nadis. I guess that's just a number. It's just a high number to show there are innumerable Nadis going through our bodies. But we have these 3 main Nadis. That's Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. So Ida and Pingala are these Nadis which kind of intersect, and they run as main kind of Nadis from side to side. And Ida starts in the left. They usually say they begin with the big toe of the right foot, and then it travels carrying prana, life energy, throughout the body, through the right leg, crossing path at the pelvis, and then changing sides. And so
then, like first chakra.
Exactly, going through all the chakras.
But it crosses first from right to left at the root chakra.
So Ida and Pingala are like nadis that intersect and cross path at every chakra, and then they also cross path at the nostrils and going into the arms. So if you breathe in
and into the brain, into the left and right side of the brain. Wait, real quick: right big toe, left brain.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Is that right?
Left nostril and left brain, yes, exactly. And if you breathe in through the mouth, then you actually let go of this opportunity to and live and to invigorate these nadis, and to empower your own prana, to activate prana. Because through the mouth, it doesn't work the same way.
I was just reading studies on mouth. I mean, mouth breathing, you don't actually activate the left and right side of your brain equally like you do when you nasal breathe. They've studied this on MRI machines, you guys, 2021 studies. It's right there.
Because that's related. And because the brain is both related to the Ajna chakra and Sahasrara. So it's in between that. And the Nadi channels run through those chakras intersecting, and thus kind of, and these intersection points, and Sushumna is running through the middle. I mean, this is quite complex yogic theory here, but these intersecting points, these are the main pranic energy centers. So they are Marma points at the same time, because earlier I was telling you Marma points are the concentrations of prana.
So and they correspond with the glandular system, the endocrine system.
That's right as well. And so unless we kind of activate by this physical breath, our inner ethereal breath, which is prana, then we are not really making the full, we are not making use of the full potentiality of prana in our bodies. Yeah. And that's actually a pity. And then these Marma points and the chakras, they go down in energy.
So from the guru, like, how did he explain the discovery of the Marmas? Right? Because it's like, when you look at it, it's like, wow, that's super mapped out. It's kind of similar to Chinese medicine acupressure points. But like, how is it revealed? Or, yeah.
The rishis of ancient India, and still there are rishis around. Rishis meaning those with wisdom, the sages, those who can sit down, meditate, and I mean real meditation, going on for days, 40 days, and thus reaching spheres within them or without them, which kind of give them access to this knowledge, which give them access about astrology, the stars. There's another question: how did Indian astrologers have such insightful knowledge about star alignments and astrological kind of confluences and so on and so forth? It's also by way of actually going inside, not by looking into the sky, but looking into the sky within them, within themselves. So this is highly fascinating, or at least that's what my guru was also telling me. Yeah, so siddhas, the enlightened beings or rishis, they had the power of reflecting on this and discovering what lies within them. And oftentimes it's, as you were also suggesting, we have the same bodies, but we lack a certain, it's like we lack certain pieces of the puzzle to make these connections. For example, there's the funny bone right here. Everyone is familiar with the funny bone.
Everyone's hit their funny bone, and it's not funny.
It's a funny bone, and it's not funny. And what happens is this kind of tingling sensation that runs from the elbow all the way to your fingers. What you can feel, this tingling sensation, in fact, is prana. This is one of the few instances where
and it's electrical energy, right? It's like the really experience of how electrical magnetic the body is. Okay, keep going.
That's it. There are a couple of other ways which you can feel prana in. If you're in meditation and you can feel this vibrancy or the kind of your body vibrating. Sometimes this happens, especially after yoga, and if you lie in shavasana, something like this might happen, or in breathing exercises. This can happen, but this is one of the times you can really feel prana in a very particular way. Sometimes it's not a very nice feeling, in fact, but this is how you can trigger. And this point here, actually, funny bone. It's not a bone at all. It's a nerve. It's the ulnar nerve, which can be compressed by pushing it towards the bone, which is here in the elbow, and then it triggers this kind of nerve release, or at least that's the kind of medical terminology. So terminology differs and the understanding of it, but in the yogic or marmic theory, this is also this marma point, which kind of can be triggered, and you kind of stimulate a pulsation or a shoot of prana into the fingers. And where I've been, my guru, for example, he was a very good healer. Unfortunately, he died 2 years ago, but he was a very skilled healer, and he had a lot of patients, elderly patients, and whenever they would kind of approach him and say, oh, I have this pain in the fingers, and to me it looked like arthritis in the fingers or something like this. They were not able to close the fist, and it was hurtful and typical, like degenerative older person's ailment.
Yeah. The hands turn into claws, right? It's like they claw up.
Exactly, and he would exactly know how to do it. I also know you can push here. This is something I would not teach. This is something I consider, this is something I should not teach. this is something I can do, but this is something I should not teach.
Yeah.
There are certain aspects I was asked to not teach. There are other points which I consider more or less kind of harmless, unless if you use gentle pressure. If you want to do this prana sensation, you need some more some heavy deep force. So this is not something I'm telling you about, but that's the other
thing that really came up in
and people afterwards immediately they're able to close their fists.
Wow.
And they're fine, and they say, "Wow, thank you so much. I feel better." And there are different points like this, and not all the Marma points hurt, but especially in the South, in Siddha medicine, they have this kind of tendency to use only this deep, very short kind of triggering manipulations. They call it opening the vital points. And it's usually 1 to 5 seconds pressure only, and it usually hurts. It hurts like hell. And but afterwards, it's really like this funny bone in different places of the body.
Yeah, you unblock the channel. Exactly.
You open them, and then prana is free. That's what happens, and you can really tell if you hit. It's you're not prepared for it, and it hurts. It's not very pleasant, but afterwards, actually, if you wait for 1 minute or so, it's not that bad. It's okay again. Blood is running.
That really occurred to me reading parts of Lethal Spot's Vital Secrets, your book, and how the physical training to practice the medicine, right? To be a guru, to be a doctor, to be right. It's like in order to do the therapy on other people requires a physical, I mean, not just breath work and yoga postures and that, but like toughening of the hands, like actually building the physical strength. And this to me is another just massive, if we look at it from medical anthropology, just a massive differences. If we look at what's happening in allopathic medicine, we have, even in the last 100 years, I was reading an article this morning written in 1899 by someone who was looking at mouth breathers then and what was happening in jaws and teeth and just the whole destruction of the oral tissue there's the correlation with cognitive function and all that. If we look at 100 years ago, westernized doctors in Germany and the United States would smell the patient's breath, would smell their body odor, would look in their tongue, would look at their eyes, would physically touch, would take their pulse, would physically investigate, use touch therapy. And now it's like we're so machine driven. We've lost the ability to use our body to sense what's wrong with another body. And when I was reading about just the toughening practices and the strengthening practices with the fingers, with the hands, with the arms that your guru had you do in order to understand the medicine, it's like, wow, we're really doing the opposite now. It's like, we're not even using, we're not even shaking people's hands anymore, right? Like we're not getting any information from one person's body to another person's body without the use of a machine. And there's not training in how to visually look at urine, feces, the byproducts of the body as well, which might totally gross people out. But it's like, come on, like medicine can be really easy if we use all of our senses.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. I mean, for instance,
so tell me more about like the strengthening practices, like how a person's body had to be able to do certain things in order to practice medicine in this tradition.
Yeah. One important aspect that I've been kind of leaving out so far is that these vital spots, Varma, and sometimes in South India, they're also called Varmam. So that's usually the term, but it's basically the same. Although some, according to the tradition, from tradition to tradition or from lineage to lineage, some of these points vary, but that's a whole different book altogether, in fact. So some points are more difficult to penetrate, and some bodies are, if a patient is fat or something, it's really difficult to get to the point. In fact, and some points are like buried somewhere beneath these physical structures inside. So for some manipulations, you need the physical strength to do it. And some of the massages, so it's not just about like direct manipulation, bang, here, one touch, and now you go. It has to do a lot with massages, similar to Ayurvedic massages too. So as every practitioner was kind of suggesting, you need some stamina if you want to do this. This is one point. The second point is there's a relation to martial arts practice. And that was actually one of the things that drew me to Marma practice in the first place, because to me that was like, what? Those are two opposites. How can those go together? It's not possible, because one is healing, the other is harming. One is medicine, the other is martial arts. One is like, yeah, no way. So I want to see this. How does this work? And in fact, it works quite nicely. They belong together, as the practitioners say, because you must know one side of it if you want to apply it on the other. Because if you know which bones break easily, or which of these points are very vulnerable to trauma, injury, and so on, then you know what to do in such a case of injury or accidents. So that really makes sense. Secondly, you learn in training certain martial techniques. You train the same movements, and it may really sound strange, but one applies, for example, if you're in the martial arts training ground, that very technique, you learn how to hit that that vital point. You can directly translate it into the dispensary, into the massage area, and you know, okay, this is how the body looks, this is where the point is, or it should be around this area, and this is the amount of pressure I have to use. So it really makes sense. Again, in a fight, in a combat situation, you know, okay, this point is deadly. In fact, I will not aim at this, or maybe I will strike this point because I know it's not very deadly, but I will make sure that my opponent is out for the next 5 seconds, and I'm out of this fight. So it's quite neat on the one hand, and on the other, it really goes very well together. And you find the same kind of combination of medical and martial in many of the East Asian traditions, acupressure, point techniques, and even acupuncture points. Some of them are present in the East Asian martial arts forms. So yeah, that's very important. And now we don't have this kind of bodily training, this physical immersion in the practice in the West, for example, where, as you earlier mentioned, doctors may be smoking. Yeah, that's a typical cliche here too, in Germany, for example, but it's true at the same time. All the cliches are about a kernel of truth. So yeah, doctors don't necessarily look after themselves, but if you're in the Marma practice, you have to look after your own body, you have to look after your own Marma points and your pranic system, because this pranic system is what allows you to establish a connection to the patient. And the patient is not just a number or a name on paper or a symptom, but the patient is also a pranic system. So the healer's pranic system, or pranic circulation, is kind of communicating with the pranic circulation of the patient, because there something might be wrong. And if there's something wrong with the healer, then we only have two wrongs, and two wrongs don't make a right. So it's much like this anecdote or this story that you've been telling earlier about the shaman doing his healing ceremony. It's very much like that, because this healing pranic circulation has to be in the right order in order to make sure, and in order to detect what is wrong with the patient, and then detect, okay, this is the Marma spot, and this is how to kind of deal with this this imbalance. So yeah, it's really it's much more about physically training into the system than theoretically studying these points, because it's not about locations. We should not understand Marma. Often I see these charts, and again, this is about the book knowledge, but these charts don't really give you much. If I'm teaching something, and we could also do this, like I could say, okay, this is a Kshipra point between the thumb and the index finger in between here. It's actually quite a well-known point. If I would teach this to someone, I would say, okay, use a wide circulation. You don't have to find the exact spot. If you feel some kind of tenderness, then yeah, that's a good indication. Something is going on there and you really need this kind of circulating but gentle massage. You would cover not just the spot, but a wide area. This is fine because we should see Marma points not as like limited and fixed objects, but as a continuum, because we are made of prana all throughout our bodies. And so there's a concentration here, but prana is left and right and up and down. Everything is prana, so we can stimulate prana everywhere. It's just that at the Marma point, if we were to find the correct position, and this varies from body to body and from person to person, then yeah, that's fine. But any massage, any kind of massage kind of addresses the pranic system within the Marma spots, and that's fine. Even the Western types of massage. So it's not that in the West we are completely blind to the system and we ignore it. We kind of ignore it, but we make practical use of it.
Yeah.
In a way, but it could be even more rigorously applied. So yeah, definitely there's a lot of scope for us to discover.
Yeah, it really occurs to me how much if we look at medical anthropology over time, right, and just look at like who are the practitioners of the healing arts, who were the the medicine and medicine women of yore. It's like they had the strictest practices, and we still see it today. Like a lot of Westerners now, I don't know if it's the same in Germany, but like a lot of people are turning to shamans again to do ayahuasca ceremonies, and there's these dietary recommendations, aka requirements, like really get salt out, get spice out, eat a very, very simple diet, and it's really clean up your system, no caffeine, no alcohol, and the more I look at over time, it's like the people that carried the knowledge of medicine were the ones that had the most intimate experience of the human body. And they got there often through a fasting state. They got there through breathing practices. They got there through merging their physiology with the elements around them, with the sky, with the earth, with fire, with water, understanding it in the most primitive in primal. And I don't mean primitive in a negative way at all. I mean it in like the primal energies of how does energy and matter actually work? How does energy and matter work? And then they could use energy or consciousness to affect matter in another person's body. And in that process, there's usually transmission. There's usually and I saw it when I was in India studying with Dr. Vasant Lad in Pune in his Gurukula program 20 years ago, and just seeing like a person would walk into the room and the consciousness of the guru would affect the consciousness of the patient. Like all of a sudden they knew that like this was important. Like they were, and it's like when you see even a dog and walk into a higher vibe atmosphere, they're relaxed and higher awareness. And it was like that. And there were patients out the door, like one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. I mean, it was kind of exhausting. We'd be there for 3 hours and there'd still be a line out the door and we'd leave. And there was that transmission happening because of the guru's practice, because he had a strict diet, because he had a lifestyle that engendered higher levels of consciousness. So I'm wondering in what you saw in that, or what you do see in that.
Yeah. So the gurus, usually they kind of instill the same features in their students, or at least they should. It usually works that way. They kind of often meditate. They have this daily routine. There's a devotion to the gurus. So every guru once was a student. So they have the gurus, and they used to keep the pictures of the gurus in their little clinics or at their home. And so no day starts without giving prayer, reverence to their gurus. And this is something that is also repeated in mind or in their whole being whenever they approach a patient. So that also comes in. And I think it also works as a kind of mnemonic device whenever you kind of bring that to mind, because you at the same time you bring back to mind the period of learning and teaching, and how you did that. And it's just not, mnemonic doesn't usually mean or necessarily mean only cognitive. It's a physical, it's a full body experience. So you kind of, even elderly practitioners have such a amazing force sometimes, because they get into this full presence of being in their full vitality and using their pranic energy to penetrate a vital spot. So it's really amazing, and it's completely different from, as you also mentioned earlier, the experience many of us have visiting a medical doctor, where you kind of, you don't know the name of the doctor in many cases, and they surely don't know your name, and there's no, like, often not even a like greeting, hi, maybe hi, what brings you here, sure, that happens, but that's like a very formulaic kind of interaction, and it's not about the essence of the thing. And then you probably, it started with the stethoscope, trying to not get too close to the patient, because you can also, it also works like listen, using your ear to listen to the vital signs and to the beating of the heart. And in Ayurveda, you still read the pulse by tactility. So you use your
touch the other person. You really do. You really touch them without gloves.
In Western medicine, that is being lost, the touch, because we have machines, and these are powerful machines. You can look and you see so many things, and how not everything is bad. It's fantastic. This is fantastic technology. How will you see with your eyes, for example, some tumor in your brain? So that it's really fantastic technology, but it's slowly replacing these things like touch and some kind of inner awareness and things like this. So I think it's as important, and there are Ayurvedic specialists and in Siddha medicine that can also use Nadi pulse reading and come to the same or similar conclusions. And in fact, Marma points cannot be seen on X-ray scans or MRI and similar things, that is being like emphasized time and again by experts. And what they're saying is, these prana, you can't see prana with your eyes or any energy, because prana is actually part of your eyes and of these machines too. So it's not possible for these things to see what they're made of. So it's kind of abstract here, but so it really makes sense. And I find this fascinating. It doesn't mean we have to say, no, Western medicine, I don't believe in it, I don't want it, and it's very bad. That's not the thing at all. We shouldn't kind of say, no, we don't want it, but we, at the same time, we cannot make this divide, or this is traditional medicine and it's very obsolete, and now we have better technology, because now we can look into each and every corner of the body. We can look into many things with modern technology, but we can use this, let's say, traditional technology, whatever, to look into other spaces, which this modern technology or an MRI or X-ray is completely oblivious to. These are different fields altogether.
Yeah, different tool for the trade. Yeah, I totally agree. I agree with everything you're saying. It's not like, well, and I just want to say too, it's not like doctors have control over their schedules or their careers, right? So it's not the doctor's fault. It's complicated. It's as far as I can tell, it just all goes back to like fiat currency, and just the way that the medical industry, food industry, and pharmaceutical industry are spending tomorrow today, and it's projected to get more and more nuts, which is why I think it's an important conversation, and I think it's an important conversation for listeners to get that, like, this is why we do the most basic stuff, like even in Body Thrive. Like your wife is now in Body Thrive and in yoga health coaching, and it's like the basic stuff, right? Like the dinacharya, the daily routine that you mentioned earlier, like just the circadian rhythm, can I line up, right? Like, can I line up with the universe? Can I line up with the sun and the moon? Can I line up with the day? And we know that has tremendous effects on the brain and on the hormonal system and, whether or not we're going to be able to sleep well tonight and feel good tomorrow. So with where you're going next, and I do want to ask you a little bit more about alchemy, but I'm going to stop the recording and then start on that, and people can find that one on YouTube. Because I want to ask you about urine therapy and alchemy and cow urine and anything that you encountered there. But before we close out on this, like, where are you going next and why?
Yeah, I'm currently enrolled in this course, which is a course in naturopathy, which kind of gives me a whole new world of ideas too. And I felt like Ayurveda, Indian medical ideas is a lot. And I want more like, I want more like theoretical footing, also a kind of practical basis that I can apply to Ayurveda, because I feel like bringing Ayurveda and maybe Ayurvedic plants here to the West is a nice idea, but this is not maybe the most,
ecologically sustainable.
For example, ecological, sustainable, and it's also a good idea. I feel that what is close to my heart is empowering patients.
Yeah.
I'd like to empower, and let's not call them patients altogether.
Yeah.
Let's call them just human beings.
Yeah.
So let's empower people to their own lives and to their own health and disease. So to make their own decisions, to be clever enough, to be clever enough to lead lives that lead not to that drastic, severe diseases and lifestyle problems. Because let's face it, these are the most severe problems that we are dealing with today.
Yeah.
These lifestyle mistakes that we're doing over and over in our lives. Or at least many people do, with smoking, drinking, bad habits throughout the day and the nights, and not being close to the elements, to nature, just what you were talking about just now. So being aware of these things happening, and it's so easy, it can be. And for some, we need some kind of someone to push us, and maybe I can be someone like you to push people to make the wise choices and to steer away from disease and towards a healthy life. And that would be a lot. And for that, I felt to combine many of those Ayurvedic ideas with the more, like an indigenous Western concept would make a lot of sense. Also, in terms of sustainability, to use plants and techniques that have been known here and have been known to be sustainable and effective. So that's a thing very dear to me. And and I've just embarked on this journey, and it's going to take a bit. And at some point, I'm going to start this. Yes. So
awesome. Well, everyone, this has been Roman Sieler. His book is on the Marma points. And it's really a fascinating. We'll put all the links in the chat. And thank you.
Super cool. Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you. Very nice talking to you. That's a super nice discussion we had. Yeah.